we have these opportunities sitting in our database that are dormant, it's stagnant, and we don't have dynamic messaging that's getting in front of them. And all of a sudden, and I'm curious, where are these opportunities? How long have they been in the database? They could have been in there for 10 years, 4 years, whatever it is. And it's like to show people that there is real opportunities, there is real revenue sitting there. That message needs to be spread to the rest of your team and to the community to say, I know we think new leads are good, right? New leads are okay, but these leads were new at one point as well. Yeah. And there is a lot of money, a lot of gross commission sitting in this database. And every time you have a success story, and it's funny because that whole real sellers report kind of reminds us every day, just, letting people know, hey, here's the addresses in your database that listed their home. That's the whole point of that, is to make sure people understand within the organization that it's like there's real dollars sitting in here, and either you're going to get it or someone else is, right? But if you talk to them, if you have a conversation, you're going to increase your chances of actually it being your opportunity.
Hey, Jack Lehr down in Lehr's Lehr Podcast. If you like this, please subscribe, share, comment, and I am super grateful that I get to have the most amazing human. Here's the thing. I learned of this company, I learned of this human, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, some of the best lead generation. So I got to meet Ryan Young with Fellow, and he's way more than that. Welcome, Ryan.
Man, you're putting a smile on my face. I appreciate it. It's super exciting to be here.
Good deal. So you're out in the Cleveland, Ohio world, right?
Yep. So we have a real estate team out here in Cleveland, Northeast Ohio. I was just joking with you. I think we're gonna probably hit the other side of 0 degrees today. So I got a nice fire roaring. It's nice and toasty, and hopefully I won't freeze.
Well, and I'm going to brag a little bit for you. So the #1 large team in Ohio, number 15 large team in the country. So yep. You guys are producing, and a lot of times folks that, maybe have companies or have some ancillary services or something that they're selling, they don't necessarily have the production behind them. Yeah. So you've had the experience to be able to test, measure, and make adjustments with the technology that you guys are offering, right?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I would just say we have somewhat of a unfair competitive advantage, or maybe a cheat code, is product is not getting released. And I know we'll go deeper into Fellow in a little bit, but product is not getting released until it's pushed through my team, right? And our team, we sell 500 plus homes a year. It's like we have very experienced agents. We get really real feedback from them as they are using the product. And now, obviously, Fellow's grown significantly bigger with almost 1,000 teams on the platform, where, we get feedback in real time from all of our teams. But it's like, we are really, I get to wear two hats. I get to be the CEO of Fellow, but I also own and operate the Young team. And so it's like, I get to look at Fellow through two lenses, essentially, as a technology CEO that's looking to build incredible product and solve a pain point in the industry, but also as a team lead that's looking to continue to better our team and move our team forward and progress. And so it's like really helpful when it comes to building technology and casting a vision. A lot of that is based off of my own pain points when I'm wearing my Young team hat.
Most definitely. And I'm going to talk the origin of how I learned about Ryan and really Fellow. It was actually from Yvonne Arnold from the Tom Ferry world. Sarah is our director of ops, and she's in that operations world. And Yvonne said, "Hey, you guys should be, if you're looking at seller leads, like look at Fellow." And we had no idea really what that meant, because there's lots of different folks out there saying, "Oh, we got seller leads," and I think it's very hard to decipher what's real out there, because sure. Everybody's hitting you up. Everybody's saying we got this, we got that. And really there's either homeowners or renters. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a path to home ownership. Maybe there's a path to like them maybe selling their home if they're a homeowner. But when I started digging and we did the demo and got introduced to Ryan and his company, I was like, wow, it makes a lot of sense. And it's really your data. Yeah. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to just kind of hit you with some interesting stats that have been somewhat influential in why we built Fellow and how we're building Fellow. What our data shows us is that about 5% or more of your database is going to list their home every year. Okay. Now a lot of people are like, well, that seems pretty optimistic and aggressive. And how are you coming up with those numbers? Well, we have the data that actually supports and shows that if you have 1,000 contacts in your database, you're probably going to have 50 listings, people listing their home in that database every year. If you've got 10,000, there's 500 listings, right? We have some clients with 100,000, which is 5,000. I think the biggest challenge and pain point that us as an industry over the past decade have really fell into or struggled with is we built these databases full of buyers, right? And we got really obsessed with like buyer lead acquisition.
Mm.
So whether it's through third party sites like the big portals or PPC, whatever it is, right? So I always ask people, I say, how many contacts do you have in your database? And a lot of them really quickly will be like, I got 10,000. They say it like really with a lot of pride. I got 40,000, I got 200,000. And then when I ask them, great, how many of those contacts are homeowners in your market? They like look at me like I'm crazy. Like, well, how should I know that? Right. And it's like, well, why don't you know that? And
Yeah.
so I think this kind of theory behind like, we have these databases that we've invested a ton of money in. We've spent a significant amount of money to acquire new leads, but we're not really monetizing the databases the way we should. And not only are we not monetizing them, but we're not monetizing them on the seller side. And so one
Mm.
of the things that Fellow really does is it helps you start to reconvert all those buyer leads in your database into seller leads. And then once we actually have the seller lead, we know where they live. Then the next focus is how do we get them from raising their hand, giving you their address to working them down to till they become a listing. And so we use a lot of data points and a lot of predictability and a lot of engagement with those homeowners in your database to essentially get them to, basically raise their hand and say, I'm ready to list my house. So when I say 5% of your database is listing their home every year, we're looking at this really, really big data set that shows these massive databases that are starting to convert buyer leads into seller leads into homeowners, and then actually from those homeowners to listing their property. And it's been eye-opening. And I think it's one of the reasons why Fellow has grown as fast as it has is I think people are starting to realize how valuable and precious this asset of their database is. And now they're starting to look at it through this different lens of saying, I need to get more out of this. And Fellows really exposed that.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of us own the same data.
Sure.
And that's the thing, like when a large company bought another large company, CRM, or took it over recently, everybody's like, oh, they're going to have our data. Guess what, man?
There.
We
Yeah.
all have the same data, right?
Yeah.
And it's
100%.
what you do with it.
Yep. Yeah, and one of the things that I find is interesting is if you're buying a new lead, what you would consider as a new lead, and this is just once again why the game has changed so much over the past decade. Maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a newly acquired lead from Zillow or Realtor.com or whoever it was probably an actual new lead. Like this person was probably in very few people's databases.
Yeah.
Now, in all reality, anyone that I'm acquiring, even if they maybe pressed a button that said, I'm interested in seeing that home today, they're probably in 10, 15, 100 other people's databases, right? And so what we're seeing is the new leads, the conversion is getting reduced, right? And it's getting more diluted now than ever. And on top of that, we're in this market where there's not a lot of inventory to sell them. And they're becoming more expensive, the cost per leads, whether it's through commission sharing, 25, 30, 35, 40%.
Right.
Where is the model of profitability when you're paying 40% to acquire a lead, right, on the total overall commission generated, and you're converting those at 2, 3%? It's just the model is flawed. And so once again, what we've really done is said, instead of spending more money on new, let's just focus on what you've already acquired. That's where all the margin is. And so if we can help you convert opportunities out of something you already paid for, and maybe you paid for it 3 years ago, 7 years ago, and it turns into a listing, and then that listing is a sign in the yard, and it's an open house where you generate buyer leads, and it's sign calls, and it's great marketing, and all these other great benefits of why listings should help you dominate. we've just found that it's been kind of the path to profitability and a path to really success in this industry.
It is. And like, so I'll go back to many, many years ago. And like, I have friends across the US, just like you do, that lead generation, I used to be able to get leads for sellers and that converted at a high level, maybe like 40, $50, like for really solid seller
Sure.
leads. And
Yeah.
before Op City, like we were one of the test teams for Realtor.com before they created Op City for their seller leads. And we were converting them at like close to 40%, ridiculously killing it.
It's
And
powerful.
like if we could go back to those days, wow. But I got to tell you, Ryan, like this is the closest to that. But guess what I'm not doing?
And
I'm not spending four,
yeah,
five, $700,000 per lead because
yeah.
in certain markets, a seller leads 10K.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And here's what's interesting. So when I first got in the business, 2009, I was a big expired and FISBO guy, right? Like the market was awful. I was 26 years old, and it's like the only people that would really trust me to help them sell their homes were people that were unsuccessful selling it the first time, whether they were trying to sell it themselves or they listed it with another agent and it didn't sell. So to me, that's kind of where I got my opportunity. And I had to dial a lot and I had to talk to a lot of people. And my conversion was low, but it didn't cost me anything besides getting the data and the dialer, right? And so I built a business through listings off of profitability through this channel. But then at about, I'd say probably 5 years in about 2015, I made a really large investment into radio and TV. And I was having a lot of success. I was growing quickly. I didn't really have a team, just a very small team. But the whole message was, get a guaranteed offer on your home, which was like this large message. And we pushed it everywhere on all these radio stations. And it created just an influx of seller leads, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was paying about $1,200 per seller lead when you break down the unit economics. Now I was converting them at 60%, and my average commission, gross commission per listing was about 11,000. So the numbers made sense,
Yeah.
right? And it was just really interesting though. Like I wanted to invest more money into those type of lead sources, and I just really couldn't find anything. It's like when I look at, that high of a converting lead source that drives that much revenue to me, I would double down on that all day long. But
Yeah.
there's only so many channels. There's, once you penetrate a market, there's like, I can't just like go and multiply that spend and that's going to multiply the same amount of leads. There's a lot of overlap and stuff like that. And so what I've seen over the past probably 6 or 7 years is even that lead source started to be diluted, right? And we just had to find other ways. And the biggest thing for me and with the young team is how do you create predictability and scale on the listing side of your business? I always had that channel on the buy side because you could just spend more money buying buyer leads. If I spend another $1,000, I get X amount more buyer leads. If I spend 10,000, I get X amount more buyer leads. On the seller side, I just don't think there really has ever been that like, how do I create predictability into driving seller leads? Maybe there's been glimpses, flashes of it,
Yeah.
but so that was really important to us is saying, okay, if you're going to create predictability around seller lead generation, how are you going to do it? And that was really influential in Fellow, right? And how we built a lot of the things that we've done, and the crazy part about it, we were talking about this before we jumped on, we're 15 months into the game, right? Like imagine, and I feel like our product is really mature and our vision is really dynamic and robust for how young of a company we are. I'm super excited about the stuff we're building this year, but even our roadmap into the next, I'd say 36 months of just how we help agents, teams create predictability around seller lead generation. It's going to be a game changer.
So I'm going to share like a success. It's easy for Ryan to share a success with, your own team.
Sure.
But I'll share. So we've been with you for a number of months now, and I can tell you, like we've gotten a ton of listings, and we'll talk about that. But I'll give so we put a couple of our new agents that are with our team, like right about a year, and they've earned their ability to come into this lead generation opportunity. So this one youngster comes back and says, "Oh my gosh, I just got a fellow lead and I am loving this." And I go, "Well, what's that look like?" And he goes, "They want to sell their $350,000 condo and they want to buy another house. And they took the appointment with me. I go, oh, that's kind of surprising. And but I know it wasn't. So it's funny. So he goes and has this appointment. He's working on the listing with them. But the next day, because I shared that success with you, but the next day he comes out and he says, hey, oh my gosh, my 7th call to a fellow lead. I got another appointment. They want to list their home with me and they have a house to buy. I said, so that's potentially 4, and that's actually potentially 6, because you can double side some stuff. There's potentially 6 at least transactions. And then also, like we're big on like birds of a feather flock together. Let's build off of that relationship and get 10 or 20 more deals off of that by asking for introductions. And this kiddo's like beyond, he's like, fellow, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I go, I'm not going to say his name. I said, come on, man. I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. He said, well, you're a close second. Fellow's number 1. But isn't that really cool?
I love, you know what, it's funny. It's like those success stories and those wins make me just, it's like one of those things. It's like a proud parent that, like, you know, when you hear those wins, it's like, this is what we built it for. And, you know, to your point, it's harder for me to articulate the wins of the young team, even though we have a ton of them, because it's like, it's my, you know, it'd be like saying like, my kid's amazing. You know, it's like my kid hit a home run at the game, you know, whatever. My kid hit the game winner. It's like, obviously I'm very bullish. I'm very proud of what we built, but I've also seen the difference it's made with the young team. And that's a little bit harder to articulate to, you know, out to the externally. But that's so amazing. And the cool thing about it is that it's like, you know, that could be those 2 opportunities could be the turning point that all of a sudden turns them into your top producer. That could be 2 opportunities that lead to your point to another 10 opportunities, right? All we know is that, like, we have these opportunities sitting in our database that are dormant, it's stagnant, and we don't have dynamic messaging that's getting in front of them. And all of a sudden, and I'm curious, you know, where are these opportunities? How long have they been in the database? They could have been in there for 10 years, 4 years, whatever it is. And it's like, to show people that there is real opportunities, there is real revenue sitting there. That message needs to be spread to the rest of your team and to the community to say, I know we think new leads are good, right? New leads are okay, but these leads were new at one point as well.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of money, a lot of gross commission sitting in this database. And every time you have a success story, and it's funny because that whole real sellers report kind of reminds us every day, just, you know, letting people know, hey, here's the addresses in your database that listed their home. That's the whole point of that, is to make sure people understand within the organization that it's like there's real dollars sitting in here, and either you're going to get it or someone else is, right? But if you talk to them, if you have a conversation, you're going to increase your chances of actually it being your opportunity.
And the interesting thing is, like, we have those many $1,000s that we paid for a lead that never ever converted.
Sure.
And then we have those 30-cent Facebook leads from a number of years ago. And one of these leads is one of those.
Yep.
So 30 cents.
I just had, I was in someone posted in a group that I'm in, and it's like you know, it's like really respected top teams and agents. And she said, I just converted a 20-year-old buyer lead that came to a buyer home seminar. And it's like, well, the lead registered 20 years ago, but they might have bought and sold 3 times since they registered. It's like a name, an opted-in opportunity in your database is an opted-in opportunity, right? Whether it was 10 years ago or yesterday.
Yeah.
Give me opted-in opportunities. Give me an opportunity to communicate with them and an opportunity to convert them. And I just think, and once again, you see the space starting to get a little bit crowded with a lot of people focused on like database reconversion, which is such a large, you know, I would say kind of the core competency of what we do. We do a lot of other things as well in the seller vein, but it's like, it's just one of those things. I think that the message is out there now. And as other companies, you know, the portal companies and stuff like that are just getting so expensive, and the conversion is shrinking and dropping, it's like, it's just really hard to scale a business with that model. And so it's like, the more we can get out of our database, and especially on the seller, the listing side, it's like, that's where all the opportunity is. That's where all the profit is. That's where the scale is. And hopefully people, whether you're a fellow client or not, every call I jump on, it's like, or podcast or stage or whatever, it's like, I don't care if you use Fellow. I care that as being a partner of yours in the industry, right? A colleague of yours in the industry, that you do something, right? You change your business philosophy, moving it away from new lead acquisition into becoming really intentional and strategic with what you already have. And if you apply that to all, sectors of your business, we're going to be good. We're going to be good as an industry. We're going to be good. And I think that that's like something I've just become so passionate about.
And we're going to get deep into like what exactly Fellow does, because I think that's really important. And everybody wants to know that because they're like, oh my gosh, they're hearing these successes. But there's also this coaching aspect that comes alongside of it and the accountability. And I just want to share with you, like, so we'll have a team member that's tenured and really, really good. They do a lot of transactions and they're like, oh, and they see the Fellow comes through and it's ABC client. And they're like, I spoke to, Tom Smith, and Tom's a great client of mine. Like we're super tight. They would never, ever list their home without me. And then all of a sudden we get this report and it says, Tom Smith listed his home with ABC Realtor down the street. And you're like, hey, I know we have great relationships, but in this fast paced world of, I want to get my needs met quickly, and they press on a button and they go to ABC portal, and that person took their call and asked a couple additional questions that we didn't ask.
Yeah.
And now we it's a revenue opportunity lost. So this coaching aspect of it is huge when you have the accountability alongside of it.
Yeah. So one of the things, so here's what's cool about Fellow is what Fellow does, it's funny. I actually, with my own team, I actually think this is a bigger benefit than the actual lead reconversion component, right? What Fellow does is we scan your entire database every single day, and we scan every single address. And what we're looking for is to see if any of those addresses listed their home, whether with or without you on market or sold off market. And I think really that's been the biggest kind of like eye opener, game changer of Fellow, is once we started actually emailing every single one of our clients, fellow clients, the addresses in your database that were listing their home, right? And what's interesting is, for me, like I said, because with the young team, this is a tool that we really benefit from.
Yeah.
What's interesting is once I started getting this data every day, and it's every day, and I wish I could sometimes shut it off, but the truth, the value is in the truth, right? And what's interesting is we now look at them every single day and address by address, and we go into the agent CRM and we say, this is no judgment, but let's learn from this and let's improve from this. And what it allows us to do is really say, like, okay, did you follow our process to follow up with them? If you didn't, well, why not, right? If you did, great. And there's times where we didn't get a listing, but we called them 25 times and they just never picked up their phone or whatever it is. If we continue to do that, we're going to win a lot more than we lose, right? Yep. But then from there, we say, okay, well, you got them on the phone. Let's listen to the call. And a lot of times what I found was my team members were actually getting out scripted by the homeowner. An example would be like, oh, I was just curious, right? And then we say, oh, no problem. If you need anything, we're here to help. Give us a call. Then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, 30 days later, we get an email that said they went to market, right? Or they would say something like, I appreciate you reaching out. I'm thinking about listing in the spring. Call me after the new year, right? Well, 10 days later, 3 weeks later, they ended up listing on market with someone else. And so now we can start listening to these objections. What we thought were really just excuses, really they're just objections. And they're the homeowner essentially in defense, being defensive, and it's their defense mechanism. And now we can start pushing past those and working on those and scripting against those, right? Yeah. So if someone says, I was really just curious about the value, it's like, no, I totally understand that. But if there was an opportunity to sell your home that made financial sense, would you be open to looking at an offer, right? And now all of a sudden, if they're planning on selling in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, there's no way they're walking away from that question, right?
Yeah.
And these are the little things that, like, now we've started to move the needle from a conversion standpoint, because we have the data in real time to show us, like, okay, you talked to them, you set the appointment, you went on the appointment, but then they said they weren't ready. They still needed to do some improvements to their house before they listed. And then they listed 2 weeks later. What that means is another agent got in front of them and showed them the value of bringing their home on the market now, right? Maybe their intentions were to wait to list their home, but now we can start seeing and learning from these in real time. And it's completely changed the way my team looks at the opportunities. And so while generating and reconverting leads is great, but really the visibility into what's actually happening in our database to me has been even more beneficial, you know?
Most definitely. And that's a leadership thing too, because remember, you hand off these opportunities, and then if you don't know what they're doing, it's shame on leadership. So like, let's take responsibility. Like we had a teammate that, okay, maybe in a different part of his life, and
Sure.
just didn't make sense to be on the team any longer. And with a month of leaving our team, we noticed 9 of his clients listed homes in our database with somebody else because maybe the follow-up wasn't there. And I look at that and I go, that's not that individual's problem. That was my problem as a
Yeah.
leader,
Yeah,
not
that's great.
not taking responsibility for handing over those potential gold pots or
Yeah.
diamonds in their backyard.
Yeah, I love that from a leadership standpoint. One of the things I'm like almost becoming obsessed with, like early mornings, weekends, evenings, like identifying this like the purest, most optimal path to lead conversion, right? And just observing so much data and saying, what is our approach? Why are we doing what we're doing? How do we know this is the best approach? And I'll give you an example. We've leaned so heavily on automated texting plans.
Yeah.
Um, Historically, those have been really great for us over the past 3 months, maybe even a little bit longer, ever since with the whole like compliance things and opt-out messaging, that now is not converting the way it used to, right? We used to have automated text going out, and it's like now I'd say probably 60% of the text we receive back is stop. And that cuts off that arm, that channel of communication with the prospect.
Yeah.
So now I'm going deep and saying, all right, is the consumer just so conditioned to type stop as soon as they see that message, that's like an invitation, no matter what it says. It might say like, you just won $1 million, reply stop, they're going to immediately, it doesn't, it's like, we're so conditioned. It's like the same thing when you get a phone call from a number that you don't recognize. How often do you actually pick it up anymore?
Right.
So the times have changed, and I don't think we've changed our approach to communicate with the consumer. And so I'm like going really deep on like, is the automated text even still like a true threat to us from a standpoint of like conversion? Or is this just no longer the right way? Should we be doing something else? Should we be asking for the appointment, or should we be nurturing with more information and be more consultative? And so I'm really just kind of like A/B split testing just so many different communication channels and styles to see what is the most receptive. An example last week I was just playing around with, I actually put on the text from a home value lead. I know you're not looking to sell. We won't bother you. Just wanted to say thanks for using our home value tool. I was like, this is going to be great. No one's going to reply stop. 75% of people replied stop. It's like, all right, so this isn't the right message. Let's keep trying and let's keep R&Ding and stuff like that. And so I just say it from a standpoint of like, you know, the times are constantly changing, right? The way we communicate with people is constantly changing. And I feel like it's our job as leaders within our organization to continue to be focused on what is the most optimized way, right? Instead of just saying to our team members, do this, do this. It's like, is what we're asking them to do the most optimized way to help them convert? And now with real seller data, which is the notifications every day of the people that are listing, I'm just going super deep and have become really obsessed with like, what is the most optimized way for us to convert the most amount of those? The one variable is obviously skill set, right? Like agent skill set, which is also my responsibility as a leader in the organization.
Yep.
But if I can at least look at a large enough sample size, I feel really good about the approach we're taking. And my job as a leader is to make sure that I put my people in the best position to have the most amount of success.
Yeah. Um, and I think like the big thing that I talk about heavily with our team and others that I'm helping them is the consistency. So think about the consistent message that you're delivering. Um, So consistency without like the skill set, you'll still have a level of performance.
Sure.
Like I've seen it. I've had folks come to our team new to the industry. I said, just make the phone calls. They were like a robot. They made a boat ton of calls, got a boat ton of appointments, and got a boat ton of rejection, but they also got a good bit of deals.
Sure.
And I get to see that when you're being consistent. Boy, when you build the skill sets along with the consistency, I don't care what your method of communication is, whether it's smoke signals or Dagburn, carrier pigeons, it works.
Yeah.
And but I want to get into the real, like the meat of fellow. Okay.
Yep.
So let's just say I come to you, Ryan, and I go, hey, listen, I have database of 20,000, and really I have 220,000, but like we started out with you guys at 20,000, just that like
Yeah.
let's test and let's see what
Which
this
was
looks
the
like.
right move, by the way. It's like show proof of concept. And then once you see that it actually works, let's go all in.
Yeah. And so now we're at that point where we're adding data, adding the right data. Out of our 220, there's probably a lot of that's not appropriate for this platform, but we're starting to add more and more, and it's playing out. But let's just say I come to you and I go, I have 1,000 or I have 20,000 in my
Sure.
database. How does it work?
Yeah. So here's what we found is as long as we have a valid email, we can help you start to monetize your database, right? And so what we do, and we're moving into different communication channels, but when we first launched, we were strictly email based. And where we saw one of the biggest opportunities was we myself included, was so many people said, like I was kind of saying when we first started the call, I have 20,000 contacts in my database. 2,000 of them are my past clients. And so I know where they live, right? I have their address. And
Yeah.
so those are the people that I'm really messaging with seller messaging. Hey, happy holidays. Hope all is well with the house. I can't believe you've been in the home for 4 years. What are your plans with the house, et cetera, right? But we felt like, there's a large part of your database there that's not being touched.
Mhm.
All that 18,000, the leftover was people just had them on buyer messaging, right? IDX searches, hey, interest rate information, all these other things. So what we said was there's an opportunity. How many of these 18,000 are actually homeowners?
Mm.
And so what we did was we started actually messaging the entire database. If we knew what the address was of the homeowner, we actually put that into our messaging. So it was a little bit more personalized, which increased conversion, increased click-through, stuff like that. But where we found there was a significant amount of success was let's get that message to people that we don't know where they live. That was a buyer lead saying something along the lines of like, you'd be shocked at how much your home is worth. Check out your value, right? Market is changing really quickly in September. Check out your value. And then what would happen is when they would click on see my home's value, the next question would say, great, confirm your address, right? And so now what would happen is now you have these buyer leads that are actually giving you their address.
Mm.
And now we're moving them into seller messaging, right? So it's like, so now we've just converted what would be essentially a buyer lead in your database, whether they're active or dormant. And now all of a sudden they're raising their hand and saying, I want to know how much my home is worth, or, whatever the call to action is, getting a cash offer, et cetera. Now all of a sudden they're giving you new information. They're re-opting in to this, to this new message. Now we can all of a sudden start focusing on, all right, so we know you own this home. Now, how can we help convert you from a homeowner in our database, just like the other 2,000 that we started with?
Yeah.
How can we start getting messaging to you? Well, let's look at data, right? And Fellow is super rich in data, mortgage data, public record data, MLS data. Now I can start getting really segmented, granular, kind of, I would say, relevant messaging to you. If I know you've been in your home for over 20 years and you don't have a mortgage on your property, well, you should be communicated with versus someone who just bought their home 6 months ago and has a 3% mortgage on their property, right?
Right.
If I know that you just took a home equity line of credit, 6 months ago at 3%, and now it's an adjustable and now it's up to 7%, that might impact, the way your plans of staying in the home. If I know that the value of your home is more than doubled in the past 4 years and you have 80% equity in your property, like that might change the way I'm getting messaging to you. So what Fellow has done is started is moving buyer leads into seller messaging, but
Mm.
then looking at all this really rich data to say, how long have you been in your home? What kind of mortgage do you have on your property? What kind of home do you have? What's the value of your home? And starting to move into really like granular segmented messaging to start working them down the funnel, you know?
That's beautiful. So like now you have this communication taking place.
Yeah. And it's
And like,
all automated, pushing back to your CRM, talking back and forth, sits on the side, you know?
so there's so much more to this. Okay. So now let's talk about like I'm a real estate agent and I've got put on fellow opportunities. I
Yep.
like to call them opportunities versus leads. So I got some opportunities in fellow and I get to see this portal.
Yep.
What am I seeing?
Yep. So here's one of the biggest things that I think is is kind of a lost opportunity when people talk about being like data rich, right? So you get to see a significant amount of data on the consumer, right? Every single contact in your database. But when you combine data mixed with behavior or combined with behaviors of that consumer, now all of a sudden we really have like a nice formula for like intentionality, or as we call it, propensity, right?
Yeah, propensity. Yep.
So you give me someone that's been in their house for over 10 years and their home has doubled in value and they don't have a mortgage on their property. But on top of that, they've opened 17 emails from Fellow and clicked on their dashboard 8 times.
Mm.
All right, now we're talking, right? Intentionality is there. Now I know this person is actively being engaged with the messaging we're sending them. They know your brand because everything is white labeled to your brand. Now, all of a sudden, that call is not a cold call anymore. Now, that call is something we've been providing you value. Plus, the data that we're looking at is suggesting that there's a higher probability that you're going to sell versus other people in your database. And so now all of a sudden, it's a much warmer phone call. Now it's fun to call them and say, hey, I just wanted to check in and make sure you're getting all the information we've been sending you. You already know they've been getting it because you can see the opens, the click throughs, their engagement, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then moving the conversation forward from there of, and by the way, if there was an opportunity and it made financial sense, would you be open to, dot, 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 right? Looking at an offer, selling your home, me bringing buyers by. And so I think what we've just seen, and we're just doubling down on that whole thesis of like, the data plus the behavior is really what true propensity is and is really the largest predictive indicators of who is actually going to be selling their home in your database. And the cool thing about it is it sounds overwhelming if you're not on the platform, but it's like Fellow's doing all this just through automation, right? Like obviously we don't call the prospect, we don't go on the listing appointment for you, but it's like if we can take your database of all these dormant people that you weren't doing anything with and start to shake it up and create engagement and then combine data on top of that engagement to say, here's where you need to be investing your energy or your marketing dollars, you're going to see there's a much better return on investment,
Oh my goodness. So now, so now we have this data in front of us and we're making a phone call and we're bringing value, but you can make some adjustments because sometimes that data isn't correct because we all have a lot of the same access to that
Yeah.
data, right? What does that conversation sound like with one of those potential clients?
Yeah. So one of the things that I find was really frustrating with our team was we would get a lot of calls from our clients, whether it was, the Zestimate or wherever they were getting their information about the value of their home, some sort of automated value. Well, the challenge is that like real estate is a local sport, it's so localized and every market it has a micro market and especially where we live and so many other people around the country. And so what Fellow does is we provide a couple automated values, AVMs, but we also give the agent at any point in time the ability to override the value to whatever they think it's worth. And then from there, we support their number by applying a little bit of appreciation or depreciation. And what's really nice about this, and once again, the data plus behavior is how we identify propensity. So when I reach out to the prospects that are getting these Fellow emails in the Young Teams database, or if I'm an agent who's on Fellow and I'm saying, you need to use this dashboard because it's powered by the local expert, it's powered by me, right? I can at any point in time make adjustments to the value versus if you go to get your, home value on one of the national portals, you can't call their customer support and say, I just redid my kitchen. Can you increase the value of my home? They're going to like, get out of here, right? Versus, I want you to call me. Tell me if you've made improvements so I can make adjustments in real time to what your home is worth. The reason why that's so important and the reason why to create trust on this dashboard between consumer and agent is the more they use it, the more I can observe their engagement or their behaviors, right? If they didn't find value in the dashboard, or if they didn't find value in the numbers that we were representing, they're never going to use it. Now I'm relying solely just on data. But if I can combine data with behavior, so the more they see value in it, the more they're going to use it, the more I can observe their engagement to create predictability around their intents to actually sell their home.
Like I think the best marketer in our industry is probably the Z word, Zillow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the portal that everybody, and
Yeah.
why did they create Zestimate? To get engagement.
100%.
And engagement,
100%.
I keep going back and looking at my value. Like that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And then when you can actually, because the hard part with Zestimate is that if I claim my home and I make adjustments, that doesn't mean the adjustment of the price is it's actually going to take, they're using national data, somewhat local sometimes, but with Fellow, you can make those adjustments for these folks and truly bring that value and say, oh my gosh, I did improve my home with putting in a new kitchen, which was a great way to add value. I added another bathroom, and then you can make those adjustments in there and they get to see that. And again, that behavior of them going back and back and back is the greatest indicator that there's massive engagement and emotional. Like all of a sudden these things start happening and it allows you to have that next conversation.
Well, 100%. And what's really cool, you can communicate with the consumer through the platform, and the ability to say, I know you're not planning on selling your home for 4 years, 10 years, whenever you are, right? But the fact that I'm constantly looking at your largest asset's value, right? And I am constantly thinking about you and making adjustments. And so it's like, there's no, from a communication standpoint, there's nothing more important than them feeling like you actually care, right? And this is just something so simple. They care about their largest asset, and they really like that you care about something they care about. And so once again, you're conditioning them, and you're essentially really putting yourself as like their agent before they're ready to sell, before they're ready to list, just by conditioning them over a long period of time of being there by their side, looking at that value with them, and really being there from a supportive standpoint of like, tell me if you make improvements. I want to let you know the ROI on that. Let's go into the dashboard and make those adjustments. Now, it's funny. I mean, despite knowing how important it is to stay in touch with our clients, we still don't always do it, right? And that's why Fellow ultimately automates the communication and gives the agent the ability to override. But that's also why we had to go back to showing the power of the real sellers, because there's going to be some people that list their home that you relied strictly on automation, and it could be a past client of yours, it could be a hot lead that you just didn't follow up with enough, or it could be someone that you talked to that you just didn't instill confidence in either what the market was doing or your ability to sell their home. And so I think, we close the loop on it with the whole real seller piece. Yeah. So it's like, we give you the ability to automate communication. We give you the ability to intervene and actually personalize communication, and then the ability to actually hold yourself or your team accountable by essentially giving you the information if they actually list with or without you.
So there's some next level things that can be done with Fellow, meaning like open houses, having the QR and driving, talk a little bit about that, because I think that's critically important, the postcards and everything like.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really important is we talk about your database is your largest asset, right? Well, I think most people think the only way for me to build my database is to buy more leads. And the more leads I buy quicker, the bigger my database will grow. Well, and it's funny, if you look at just like the history of our profession, 25 years ago, this industry was built on networking. It was built on, relationships. You would join all these different groups and with the intention of creating relationships and then putting those people manually into your CRM or wherever you put them in your Rolodex or whatever it was, right? Organic database growth is really powerful. And it's, I think, underutilized. And so if I said to every team, every agent out there, if you were to put 10 new contacts into your database every week, right? At the end of the year, you'd have an additional 500 plus contacts in your database. And then Fellow's going to market to those people and help you create opportunities out of those. The margin or the ROI on that is massive because it doesn't cost anything to do that, right? Unlike buying a new lead costs money, and then there's expectations on getting a return on the money you spent.
Yeah.
So Fellow acknowledged that if we can help agents organically grow their database, it's just another way to help them have a better ROI and just a more profitable, stable business. So we went really deep in all these different marketing products, things like QR codes and personalized URLs and postcard automation and giving basically the agents on our teams, and it doesn't cost anything. It's just a part of the platform. We're that passionate about organic database growth, giving agents and team leads the ability to essentially build your database organically. And I'll give you some examples. If you're not doing this, these are things where there is just lost opportunity. If your email signature doesn't have a call to action, something along the lines of like, get your home value in seconds, you're missing an opportunity, right? Every time you send out an email, whether it's a transactional email, marketing email, just sending an email to a friend, whatever it is, if you don't have something driving them to a place to get into your database organically, you're missing an opportunity. If your business cards don't have QR codes, if when you're doing open houses, you don't have a place to capture information centered around the home value, if you're not posting on social media, are you curious what your home's worth? Check out your value here in seconds, and we can drive them to a landing page that's personalized and customized. I say this because, like, once again, we've built this mindset of like the only way for us to build is to acquire more. Fellow has kind of said, let's give you the tools to go out and, hunt and, grow. And let's go back to like this really organic approach where there's this profitable, scalable business model instead of saying the only way for me to grow my business is to spend more money acquiring opportunities. So the marketing suite is really powerful, postcard automation, all these different things that like we're really going deep into, and with the intent of just helping agents grow their database without spending as much money as they used to.
Man, Ryan, like we got pretty deep here. We shared a bunch of stuff, and again, it's truly being consistent in what fellows bring into our current database, and that consistency leads to opportunities.
100%.
And then hopefully we build our skills and we have leadership alongside of us. And for the accountability aspect of it, man, this is gold. And like out of my last 10-ish years, by far, like I'm all in with Fellow. I did a little dancing to start with, but now we're going all in, and we're reaping the rewards based on going all in. So I'm super grateful that I got to spend the last hour-ish with Ryan Young from Fellow, CEO of Fellow, and the young team out of Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, this is a treat. And, as you can tell, I've got a lot of passion behind this, and it's even more fun when I get to sit down with people that are actually using the product and having success with the product. The conversation is just that much more real. And it's like one of those things that just, I get that much more excited about it because it's like, well, this is why we're doing it, and it's, I will say it's pretty surreal to like be sitting on this call with you and talking about, what we built and the value you're getting out of it. So I'm just grateful to be here.
Most definitely. So like in our posts, we'll include some links that you can connect with Ryan and his team, that you can explore Fellow and what they're about. And again, Ryan, I'm super grateful that you joined me on the Lehr today. Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it, my friend.